What's up everybody and welcome back to the channel. In this video for the First Descendant today, we are looking at the ultimate assault rifle, Fallen Hope. Now I like to start these videos off with a TLDR and basically what I think of the weapon. And this is a difficult conversation to have because I think ultimate assault rifles in the game are super underpowered at the moment and not really exciting to use. I personally think the best assault rifle in the game is actually a purple assault rifle. It's Eternal Willpower. To me, this is a far superior assault rifle to any of the ultimates that we have available. And so I had high hopes that with the Season 2 update that they did to Fallen Hope, where they basically gave it more firearm attack, that it would feel, more substantial, it would feel more powerful. And unfortunately, I still don't quite think that we're there. Now, I think this stems from two places, really, the problem, specifically with Fallen Hope. I think Fallen Hope's unique ability is kind of clunky and doesn't really, work as well as it seems to work on paper. Like when you read it, and we're going to look at it just now, it kind of seems a lot cooler than it is. And then secondly, I just think that in general, the power level of assault rifles are fairly low, and there's factually no reason to use, Fallen Hope if you've got Enduring Legacy, for example. Enduring Legacy is by any metric just the superior, piece of weapon. And so therefore, if you have an option between the two, you'd always go Enduring Legacy. There's really no reason to pick Fallen Hope. So I think this is the problem. I think that you could potentially adjust this power as much. And of course, if they make it like super OP, that it basically one-taps everything, then yes, it will be a strong weapon. But the thing is, I think the problem stems more from the fact that it's just not, it just as a package doesn't really come together. But I'm getting ahead of myself and I'm obviously turning you off to the weapon already. We did make a build for it and I want to share all the details behind that. And of course, there'll be some footage running in the background as you can see it perform. But as usual, first things first, let's just go ahead and look at the unique ability. Now, as a flavor, right, Fallen Hope works around a poison mechanic, right? So the idea is that it performs exceptionally well against enemies that are poisoned. So this is already your first hint in sort of like how this weapon should be built, is that you should be leveraging the elemental effect poison because that's how you get the most bang for your buck out of this gun. But the unique ability is called Perdition, and it says that when you hit a poisoned enemy, it increases your firearm attack and it applies a buff to the weapon. Now, the buff to the weapon is this 30%. So as soon as you're shooting a poisoned enemy, all right, and that poison, can come from the gun, then basically your firepower damage goes up and you can actually see your bullets hitting harder. Then as soon as you kill one of these poison enemies that still has poison on them, they will explode and actually pass that debuff, that poison debuff, onto the enemies around it. And there's a radius for this explosion like 6 meters, and it also has a trigger rate of 40%. So it's also not definite that every single enemy that you blow up with this weapon is going to spread that poison, and it's actually less than half chance of it happening. So this is my first point here. This is a 4 out of 4 Fallen Hope. These stats are fucking abysmal. Like this 40% should, I don't know, I mean maybe 100% is a bit, stinky. But the point is 40% is way too low for a 4 out of 4 stacked weapon, right? The additional damage is cool, like the 75%, that's nice. And the actual dot itself lasts for 5 seconds with a 2.5 second damage interval. So for the 5 seconds, it ticks twice, basically. So I don't have a problem with this per se. The 40% really irks me. And then the other issue is these additional penalties that we also see at the top here. Again, generally speaking, how it works is when you stack more ultimate weapons in and you go from a 0 out of 4 to a 4 out of 4, it should diminish all of the negatives of the weapon pretty much to a 0. At least it does this for most of the other weapons in the game. So it's really odd to me that we have this, and I definitely think that this weapon is probably going to see another pass, but definitely deserves another pass. They could also potentially rework this entire effect. It basically functions as a mini contagion, but not nearly as fun or fucking cool. So yeah, I think this unfortunately does not blow my hair back all that much. Okay, so when we then jump into the build itself, first thing we got to do is we just got to look at the base stats and kind of like figure out how we want to build it. Now, I have a general rule of thumb when it comes to critical hit rate and critical hit damage, that there's a certain threshold that for me is when a weapon is worth building into crit and when it's not. Now, unfortunately, this gun has like a weird percentage, right? Its base version has a 12% critical hit rate chance with a 1.7 times multiplier. I like the multiplier. The 1.7 times is decent, but 12% is just simply too low. And considering the fact that we want to stack as much damage onto this weapon so that once we actually shoot a poisoned enemy, that 30% firearm attack is substantial enough, it doesn't warrant us building this crit. You're going to spend too many modules and you're still going to have a very, very low base ceiling of maybe like 25 to 28% once you've stacked in all the mods. So just not really worth it. So we're going to build it for raw power, and specifically we're going to flavor it heavily towards toxic so that we can get this poison effect. So as usual, we're going to start out with the tripod, right? So we're going to go action and reaction, boom, which gives us firearm attack and a little bit of additional recoil. And then we're going to go with some fire rate up. And that is going to mean that our bullets are going to go out of the gun faster and deal a decent amount of damage quicker. And then last but not least, for our tripod, we're also going rifling reinforcement, right? So this is how you tend to start every build, is these three mods. Sometimes you don't include fire rate up, but the point is you want to just be stacking as much firearm attack, and that comes from these two mods, perfectly. Then the next thing we want to do, and we have to look here and we can see that it has a mag size of 35 bullets, right? So 35 bullets on an assault rifle that shoots decently fast, it has a fire rate of 800 now, especially with the fire rate up that we just put in there, means that you're going to be emptying that mag like super fast. So you absolutely want to have some, more bullets in there. And the first way that we can do that is we can put in something called expand weapon charge. This is going to give us 49% additional rounds per magazine, and that's going to take our 35 all the way up to 52. Then we can also put something in called weapon tuning, right? So weapon tuning is going to give us 30% more rounds per magazine, and also a ridiculously low 1% increase to firearm attack, but it is what it is. Then we jump all the way from 35 up to 62. So we're basically doubled up, and 62 feels really good in this weapon. Next up, we can push our power even more by using a mod called charge amplification. What this does is it gives you a massive bump to your firearm attack, but does actually tank your firearm critical hit damage. But since we're not building crit, we don't really care about that deficit. So this is going to really jack up our firearm attack quite decently. And now we need to start stacking in just toxic, just tons of poison shit. Okay, so we're going to start off by using toxic enhancement. This adds 30% of our firearm attack as a toxic attack on top of this. So essentially you are dealing some toxic damage, and this is how we get the enemy poisoned. All right. Then we are going to put some mods behind that to essentially just make this effect stronger, but also to make our weapon stronger. So the first way we can do that is we can use something called poison priority. If I can eventually spell it, that would be fantastic. So poison priority says our toxic attack plus 50%, but it also unfortunately makes us reload slower. So when we slap this in, we see our reload now jumps all the way up to 2.21 seconds. Now that's not brutal, okay, but it does mean that you can possibly just weave in some reload cancels here and stuff. So every once in a while, if you've got the move, you can just sort of like roll and you'll get your reload back, halfway through your animation. So that's obviously something that you can do to deal with that situation. Next, we're going to put in something called Toxic Conductor. Now this says when attacking enemies inflicted by poison, your firearm attack goes up by 26%. So now this, alongside the 30% that we're getting from the intrinsic buff from the unique ability, means that we are really just getting a massive bump of a firearm attack once we start hitting enemies that are poisoned. And then last but not least, we have Toxic Circulation, which is a new mod that was added to the game recently. And this then says, upon inflicting poison effect, increases your toxic attack by 90% for 5 seconds. And this is on a 20-second cooldown. So it means that every 20 seconds, you're going to have 5 seconds of burst damage. And this is really nice on if you're mobbing with this, then you're not necessarily always going to notice it because just normal rank and file enemies die so quickly. But this is super noticeable when you're going up against like a boss or a yellow bar or something like that, because you're going to see as soon as this effect kicks in, you're going to see a nice ramp of damage. So this is the whole sort of package. And like I said, we're going fucking all in on the toxic, baby. So yeah, this hits decently well on enemies. I still feel, and this is a very, this is a personal thing, right? I feel like the gun handles like ass though. It doesn't feel good to shoot. comparing it to something like Eternal Willpower, and I like the idea of an assault rifle in this game. It looks cool. And it's nice and fast and snappy and everything. It's basically the more, how can I say, loose, fast version of a light machine gun. And for that reason, I really want to use assault rifles in this game. But Fallen Hope just doesn't feel good. It's just a gun feel thing. But again, you might feel different. And that's why it's important for you to not just take my word for it, but also to try it out yourself. Last but not least, before I let you go, let's quickly talk substats. So because we're not going crit, it means that we're not rolling crit hit and crit hit rate and crit hit damage. I really struggle to get that out. And because this is not necessarily a weapon that I'm going to be using for void intercept bosses, I also didn't roll Colossus damage on this. So that means that we have quite a few slots open. Of course, we roll firearm attack because that's just additional damage for us. Then rounds per magazine means that we have even more bullets. So now if I look here, we can see that we're actually sitting on 66 bullets in the gun, which is nice and means that, you know, you'll spend less time reloading and more time killing. And then of course weak point damage is on here because now we're running out of rolls to really put onto the gun, honestly, because the problem is, I mean, if we're not putting crit, if we're not putting crit damage, stuff like that, the only thing that you really have left is like, you know, you could potentially go for the roll that you can apply the toxic easier. Maybe that's something that we could try. But weak point damage is okay because the point is, if you are shooting yellow bar enemies and stuff like that, you tend to want to aim for the head in any case to deal more damage, and then this weak point damage is going to kick in. And then last but not least, like I said, we're double, triple, quadrupling down on the toxic. I put toxic attack on here as well. I've been trying to roll golden toxic attack on this fucking thing for like a day, and it's just not dropping. So after about the 4th time of getting purple on it, I just fucking gave up and just kept the purple roll. But I know it's going to bother me, and at some point I'm just going to sit and roll this until I run out of money. But at the moment right now, these are the substats that I would recommend for this particular build that basically goes deep in on toxic. And that's it for the build. That's it for the video. Thank you so much for watching. As always, the support on the First Descendant content has been fantastic. I can't thank you guys enough. If it isn't that time yet and you're watching this video before the day, Merry Christmas. Enjoy the time with your family. And as always, fucking cheers.